The one who ignores you the most might be the one who loves you the most. Strange, isn't it? At first glance, it sounds completely wrong. Love is supposed to be loud, attentive, obvious. Love is supposed to look like daily texts, warm words, open arms. So how could someone who seems so distant be the one who holds the deepest affection for you? And yet this paradox shows up again and again. In families, in long marriages, in friendships that matter more than we admit. The people we care about most sometimes seem to drift away. They don't call, they don't respond. They become quieter, colder, almost invisible. It hurts. But beneath that hurt, there's a deeper question. Why does this happen? Why does love, in its most sincere form, sometimes hide behind silence? To answer that, we need to step beyond appearances and look inward, not just at them, but at human nature itself. Because the truth is this: we are not always good at handling love. Love makes us vulnerable. It brings us closer to the parts of ourselves we've tried to avoid. And for many, the safest way to feel love is to pull away from it. Sometimes we ignore the people we love, not because we've stopped loving them, but because they matter too much. They make us feel seen, and being seen can be terrifying, especially if you've lived a life hiding behind competence, independence, or survival. Other times we take their presence for granted, not out of cruelty, but out of familiarity. The more available someone is, the less we notice the weight of their presence, until it disappears. This is not always intentional. It's the quiet flaw in how the human psyche works. We value what we fear losing, and we forget to cherish what we assume will always be there. But here's where Stoic wisdom meets modern psychology. This video will not just explain what is happening, it will help you understand why, with compassion, clarity, and calm. We'll explore why familiarity can make someone you love seem invisible, how different people express love in wildly different ways, why some distance is actually a test, not a rejection, how fear, shame, and insecurity create emotional walls, and why the greatest love often begins when you stop chasing and start centering yourself. This isn't just about understanding others, it's about reclaiming your peace even in the middle of emotional confusion. It's about learning how to remain whole, even when the ones you love pull away. Because in the end, the Stoics would say, it's not what they do that hurts us, it's how we interpret it. Let's begin. Reason number 1. Familiarity breeds indifference. After all, we are creatures of rhythm, of habit, and what the mind sees too often, it begins to ignore. This is one of the quiet truths of human psychology. When someone is always there, we stop noticing their presence. Not because we don't love them, but because the brain, clever as it is, learns to tune out what feels predictable. Think about it. Have you ever stopped noticing the ticking clock in your home, the hum of the refrigerator, the photograph that sat on the same shelf for 20 years? They're still there, still meaningful, but they've faded into the background noise of your life. And the same thing can happen with people, especially those closest to you. The more present you are, the more available, reliable, consistent, the more you risk becoming emotionally invisible. It's not fair, it's not intentional, but it happens because the human mind tends to devalue what it believes it will never lose. And this is where Stoicism offers us a powerful reminder. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." He wasn't being morbid. He was inviting us into presence, because nothing in life is guaranteed. Not the people, not the moments, not even ourselves. And yet, how easily we forget. So when someone begins to ignore you, not out of anger but out of habit, it might be because your presence has become too expected, too certain, too constant. And in the paradox of human nature, what is always there is quietly taken for granted. But when distance enters, when you step back, grow quiet, or simply stop chasing, the rhythm breaks. Suddenly, your absence creates space, and space awakens awareness. You become visible again, not by becoming louder, but by becoming less accessible. This is not manipulation, it is reality. And understanding this reality allows you to reclaim your dignity without resentment. Because the lesson is not to disappear completely, but to stop offering yourself so freely to those who no longer see the gift in your presence. Let them miss you. Let them feel the silence. Let them remember what it feels like to reach for you and not find you immediately. Sometimes, it is through absence that value returns, not because you became more, but because they finally remembered what they were overlooking. Reason number 2, love is not always loud, it's found in the silence. We live in a world that often mistakes volume for value. The louder someone says, "I love you," the more we believe it. The more public the affection, the more secure we feel. And yet, some of the deepest love stories are written quietly, in the spaces between words. Not everyone loves the same way, and more importantly, not everyone was taught how to show love the way you expect it. Some people grew up in households where affection was shown through actions, not words, where love looked like a meal left on the table, a coat handed to you without a smile, bills paid in silence, presents without performance. In such worlds, saying "I love you" might feel unnecessary or even uncomfortable, because in their heart, they've always loved. They just never learned to speak it aloud. So what happens when someone like that enters your life? You reach out with warmth, and they stay reserved. You express yourself clearly, and they nod quietly, then go fix the heater or sweep the porch. It can feel confusing, even painful. You begin to doubt, do they even care? But pause for a moment and ask instead, what if this is love, just in a different dialect? Because love is a language, and like any language, it has accents, variations, silences. Some people love through doing, some through showing up, some through the unspoken reliability of always being there, even if they don't say much. The mistake we often make, especially when we're older and long for closeness, is assuming that if love doesn't look like ours, it doesn't exist. But the Stoics remind us to observe without assumption. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And it's true. We let the silence of another become the voice of our own insecurity. But what if instead you learn to read silence, to notice the way they remember your favorite snack, or how they always drive when the weather turns bad, or how they sit next to you, night after night, without ever asking to be praised? These things are not nothing. They are small monuments of quiet devotion. Of course, it's okay to crave clearer expression, but it's also important to honor the way someone else has learned to love. Because sometimes, the silence is not absence, it's protection, or habit, or love, unspoken, but real. If someone doesn't speak your love language, don't rush to translate it as distance. Ask first, what language were they taught? You may find hidden beneath the quiet a depth of love far greater than anything said aloud. And when you recognize that, you no longer need constant proof, because real love, even whispered, is still real. Reason number 3. Sometimes ignoring is a test, not a rejection. It's easy to assume that being ignored means being unloved. When someone stops responding, becomes distant, or disappears into silence, the heart immediately whispers, they've stopped caring. But not all silence is rejection. Not all distance is a door closing. Sometimes, whether consciously or not, the one who distances themselves is watching how you respond. They're not testing you out of cruelty. They're testing you out of curiosity, insecurity, or fear. They want to see, are you rooted in yourself? Or are you someone who shatters the moment affection is withheld? They want to know, will you beg, chase, lose control? Or will you remain centered, unshaken by the shifting winds of another's attention? It's not a game. It's a mirror. one that reflects not only your relationship with them, but more importantly, your relationship with yourself. In Stoic philosophy, this moment is sacred. It is the moment when who you are is tested, not by chaos, but by stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is what they may be waiting to see, not how loudly you can shout or how fast you can pursue, but how calmly you can remain when love hides behind silence. Because if your self-worth is built on being needed, desired, or responded to, then it is not truly yours. It is borrowed, fragile, and dependent. The person who pulls away may not even realize they're doing it. It could be an unconscious way of asking, "Can you hold yourself together even when I step back?" And if you can, if you remain steady, graceful, inwardly whole, you communicate something much deeper than desperation. You are not a reflection of their silence. You are your own source of peace. And strangely, this very stillness, this unbothered presence can become magnetic. People return to those who don't demand. People trust those who don't collapse. Because in a world full of emotional volatility, inner stability feels like safety. So the next time someone pulls away, don't chase. Don't over-explain. Don't prove. Just be. Be calm. Be kind. Be complete. And let them see. Not a reaction, but a reflection of your quiet strength. Because if it truly is a test, then grace under silence is your answer. Reason number 4. Real love doesn't constantly beg to be reassured. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from always having to prove you care. From repeating "I love you," not because it flows naturally, but because you're afraid the other person might forget, might doubt, might leave. You try harder. You do more. You explain again and again. And the more you give, the more it feels like it's never enough. This isn't love. It's emotional survival. True love, mature love, doesn't ask for constant confirmation. Because when love is real, it rests in quiet confidence. It doesn't need to be relit every day like a dying fire. That doesn't mean it's cold. It means it's rooted in trust, in mutual understanding, in something deeper than words. But when reassurance becomes a daily ritual, when you're asked to keep proving your loyalty, your intentions, your heart, what you're really facing is not a lack of love. It's a presence of fear. Maybe it's their fear. Maybe it's yours. Maybe both. Because let's be honest, the need for constant reassurance rarely arises in people who feel safe inside. It arises in those who are afraid. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid that silence means rejection and distance means danger. But here's what the Stoics taught us. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. And in love, the truest form of mastery is not controlling the other, but calming the storms within ourselves. If someone truly loves you, they will not make you earn it every morning. They will not force you to keep explaining the sincerity of your heart. They will know. And if they don't, no amount of convincing will change that. Love that needs to be begged for, proven daily, fought for endlessly, is not peace. It is performance. And performances always end in fatigue. So take a moment to ask, do I feel loved or evaluated? Do I feel connected or constantly tested? Real love breathes, it pauses, it trusts, it allows space. And most of all, it doesn't ask you to pour from an empty cup just to feel safe. You were not born to endlessly prove your worth to someone else. You were born to live, to love freely, and to rest in the quiet confidence of your own heart. Reason number 5. Fear of vulnerability often creates distance. It doesn't make sense at first. You open your heart. You offer care, safety, devotion. And instead of moving closer, they pull away. You reach for intimacy. They retreat into silence. You try to connect. They build walls you can't seem to get through. You begin to wonder, Did I do something wrong? Am I asking for too much? But often the answer isn't about what you did. It's about what they're afraid of. You see, real intimacy isn't just beautiful, it's terrifying. To be loved deeply means being seen deeply. And for some people, that kind of exposure is unbearable. Because once someone truly sees you, your flaws, your fears, your past, they have the power to hurt you in ways no one else can. And not everyone is ready to carry that kind of risk. So instead of leaning in, they back away. Not because they don't love you, but because love has opened a door they're not emotionally equipped to walk through. Their silence isn't rejection, it's self-preservation. In Stoic philosophy, this kind of fear is seen not as weakness, but as unrefined emotion, a place where growth is still needed. Epictetus wrote, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their meaning. When someone distances themselves, we often interpret it as coldness or betrayal. But in truth, it may be fear, unspoken, unresolved, and overwhelming. This fear can come from childhood wounds, past betrayals, or a deep belief that they are unworthy of love that sees all of them. They fear they will disappoint you, or that they'll lose themselves, or worse, that if you really knew them, you'd walk away. So instead, they leave first, not with words, but with absence. What can you do when someone you love pulls away out of fear? First, don't chase. Chasing confirms their fear. It pressures the wound rather than soothing it. Second, don't take it personally. Their distance says more about their inner world than it does about your value. And third, remain open but steady. Let them know you're not a threat. That love doesn't mean exposure, but safety. That connection doesn't demand perfection, only presence. The Stoics teach us to accept what we cannot control and to meet others with compassion rather than complaint. So when you feel someone you love pulling away, don't rush to close the gap. Instead, become a steady lighthouse, calm, warm, visible, and let them find their way back if and when they're ready. Because sometimes, the greatest act of love is allowing someone the space to soften their fear without judgment and without pressure. Before we move on, I want to pause and simply say thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening with an open heart, and for choosing reflection over reaction. These conversations are not always easy. They ask us to look inward, to hold space for discomfort, to make peace with things we cannot change. And yet, you stayed, and that means something. If any part of this message has spoken to you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your story, your insight, your silence, it matters. You never know who else might be comforted by your voice. And if you'd like to support this channel and help bring more content like this into the world, please consider liking the video, subscribing, or sharing it with someone you love. Your presence here is not just appreciated, it's what makes this space feel alive. Now let's continue our journey with reason 6, a truth that often hides behind misunderstanding. Emotional walls are rarely built by hatred, they are built by fear. Shall we begin? Reason number 6, emotional walls are built by fear, not by lack of love. When someone closes themselves off emotionally, our first instinct is to feel rejected, to wonder what we did wrong, to assume their distance means we've become unwanted. But very often their silence is not about you. It's about something much older, much deeper, and much harder for them to face. Because here's a quiet truth. People build emotional walls not to push you away, but to protect themselves from what they fear most. They may fear being hurt. They may fear being seen too clearly. They may fear that letting you in will uncover the parts of themselves they've spent years trying to hide, even from themselves. And so, they retreat. Not with cruelty, but with caution. They stop sharing. They become vague. They avoid deeper conversations. They act like everything's fine, because it's easier than admitting they feel overwhelmed. And yes, it's frustrating, yes, it's lonely, but in many cases it's not a sign that love has disappeared. It's a sign that fear has taken its place. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You must not be hurt by the truth that others fear." Their fear is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their own wounds, some of which may have nothing to do with you. You might be the first person who made them feel something real in a long time, and that reality, though beautiful, can also be terrifying. So instead of forcing a conversation, instead of breaking down their wall with frustration or demands, stand still, be patient, be present, and most importantly, be non-threatening. Let them see that your love is not a weapon. That closeness doesn't have to mean danger. That vulnerability, while scary, can also be safe. In Stoic practice, we learn not to take others' behaviors personally. We are taught to observe, not absorb, to respond with calm understanding rather than emotional escalation, because sometimes the best way to bring someone out of hiding is not to reach further, but to simply wait without withdrawing. In time, they may begin to open again, not because you demanded it, but because your steady presence made it feel safe to try. And if they don't, you will still have honored yourself by loving without clinging and by seeing clearly without condemning. Reason number 7, sometimes distance is just a need for self-reflection. Not all distance is rejection. Not all silence is punishment. Sometimes, quietly, invisibly, someone is stepping away, not from you, but toward themselves. It's easy to take it personally. The missed calls, the lack of effort, the change in tone. And if you care deeply, you might interpret that distance as a sign that you're no longer valued. But in many cases, the truth is gentler and much harder to see. They are not pushing you away, they are simply trying to find themselves. There are seasons in life, especially later in life, when the soul grows restless. Old wounds rise. Unanswered questions echo louder. Things once buried begin to surface. Grief, regret, unfulfilled potential, identity confusion. And when that happens, the natural response is often withdrawal. Not to hurt others, but to avoid saying or doing something that feels misaligned. To pause, to process, to untangle inner knots that no one else can reach. They may not even know how to explain what they're going through. So instead, they say nothing, and you, left in the silence, may feel forgotten. But the truth is, you are not forgotten. You are just not part of the mirror they need to face right now. In Stoic thought, we are reminded constantly, we cannot control the actions of others, only how we respond. This is one of those moments because if we respond with blame, pressure, or hurt, we interrupt a process that may be vital to their emotional healing. But if we respond with grace, patience, and non-attachment, we offer them the freedom to evolve, while preserving our own peace. It's not your job to fix what they're wrestling with. It's not your fault they've gone quiet. This is their work, their journey, their reflection. And if they return to you, it will not be out of guilt, but from a place of greater clarity, groundedness, and truth. And if they don't, then you will still have remained who you are, loving, wise, and rooted. So the next time someone grows distant, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it breathe. Let it reveal what it needs to, and trust that your worth is not reduced by the space someone else needs to find themselves. You are not what they're walking away from. You are what they may need to return to, once they've come home to themselves. Reason number 8, some love is selfish, and that's okay. Not all love is selfless, not all love is noble. And yes, some people love you only when it serves them. They love you when you say yes, when you're available, when you give, when you listen, when you make their world easier. But the moment your needs arise, when you set a boundary, when you ask for understanding, when you stop giving so freely, their warmth fades, their affection shifts, and suddenly you're left wondering, was any of it real? The truth is difficult but necessary. Some people love what you do for them, more than they love you. And while that may sound cold, it's not always out of malice. It's habit, it's survival. It's a love style built on need, not on mutuality. They're not villains. But their version of love is conditional, transactional. And here's what the Stoics would say. Don't expect figs from an olive tree. In other words, stop expecting depth from someone who hasn't yet cultivated it within themselves. We suffer most when we refuse to accept this truth. We keep investing, hoping, proving, pleasing, until we are emotionally bankrupt, drained by a connection that only flows one way. But Stoic wisdom offers another path. Acceptance, not bitterness, not blame. Just the calm recognition of what is, instead of what we wish it would be. You don't have to hate people for loving selfishly, but you do have to protect yourself from placing your peace in their hands. When you see that their love depends on your performance, step back. Not to punish them, but to reclaim your energy, to recenter your self-worth, to remind yourself that love at its highest does not demand depletion to exist. You are not unlovable because someone else can only love with conditions. You are not too much because they couldn't give enough. You are simply waking up to the difference between affection and attachment, between being valued and being used. So if you're pouring your heart into a one-sided bond, pause, breathe, withdraw kindly, and return your love inward where it first belongs. Not all love is selfless, and that's okay. Just don't let it be the kind that teaches you to abandon yourself. Reason number 9, the more you chase, the more they pull away. Have you ever tried to catch a butterfly with your hands? The more you run toward it, the more it darts away, delicate, fast, unreachable. But if you sit still, quietly, it may land gently on your shoulder, unforced, unchased, unafraid. Relationships, like butterflies, follow the same principle. The harder you chase someone, the faster they retreat. When you're always the one reaching out, checking in, solving the silence, trying to fix the distance, you begin to reverse the laws of natural attraction. What should be mutual becomes one-sided. What should be fluid becomes desperate. And the more effort you pour in, the more you feel invisible. But here's the paradox. When you stop chasing, you become magnetic. Because dignity is attractive, stillness is powerful, and people can feel the difference between someone who is centered and someone who is spiraling. The Stoics understood this well. They believed in detachment not as coldness, but as wisdom. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." In love, this means, if you constantly pour yourself into someone else's space, you disappear from your own. Letting go of the chase doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start respecting yourself as much as you care for them. You give space. You breathe. You allow them the freedom to feel your absence, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of your value. Because people cannot miss what never leaves. They cannot reflect if you never stop talking. They cannot reach if you never stop offering. The strongest love is not found in pursuit, but in presence without pressure, in knowing when to step back, in knowing that your worth is not measured by how quickly someone replies, but by how steadily you can hold your own peace. When you stop chasing, you signal something rare. I am not here to convince you. I am here to be real. And in a world filled with emotional noise, that kind of groundedness becomes irresistible. So the next time you feel the urge to chase, pause, return to yourself, stand still. Let your peace speak louder than your fear, and let them come to you, if they choose to. Because love born from freedom lasts longer than love won through pursuit. Reason number 10, the most powerful love is the one you give yourself. At the end of every disappointment, every silence, every unanswered message, every unreturned effort, you arrive at one inevitable, essential question. What do I have left when no one else is giving? And the answer, if you listen closely, is not emptiness. It's not failure. It's not rejection. It's you. Still here, still breathing, still whole. Because the most powerful, most enduring, most unshakable love is the love you give to yourself. The world may withdraw, People may change. Even those you thought would stay forever may fade without warning. But if you have a steady wellspring of care, respect, and gentleness for your own soul, you will not collapse. You may bend, but you will not break. When you love yourself, you stop begging for scraps of attention. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that don't honor your presence. You start choosing peace over performance. You start becoming your own sanctuary. You become someone who is not waiting to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. In Stoic wisdom, the quality of our life does not depend on what others give us, but on what we give to our own thoughts. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And what thought is more empowering than this? I am enough, with or without them. Self-love is not arrogance. It is not a wall. It is not isolation. It is a soft but unwavering promise. No matter who comes and goes, I will not abandon myself again. And when you embody that, everything changes. You stop chasing, you stop breaking, you stop bleeding for those who never learned how to hold gentleness in their hands. Instead, you radiate. You attract, not by need, but by being whole. You rest, not in the arms of others, but in the shelter of your own soul. So if you've been searching for the kind of love that never leaves, pause. Look inward. Tend to your heart like a sacred garden. Speak to yourself with kindness. Forgive the old versions of you who begged, and become the one who finally stands tall. Because no love is more faithful, more freeing, and more healing than the love that rises quietly from within. Learning to embrace Stoic wisdom didn't happen all at once. It came slowly, quietly, through disappointment, distance, and silence. But perhaps the most life-changing realization was this: neglect doesn't always mean a lack of care. It often means confusion. It means fear. It means emotional distance that the other person doesn't yet know how to bridge. I used to take it all personally. If someone didn't call, I assumed they didn't love me. If someone pulled away, I thought I had done something wrong. If someone grew quiet, I filled in the silence with stories, most of them crueler than reality ever intended. But the Stoics taught me a different way to see. Marcus Aurelius reminded me, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed." What he meant wasn't denial, he meant discernment. That between what happens and how we react, we always have a choice. So I started choosing presence instead of panic, observation instead of assumption, and most of all, self-respect over self-doubt. I began to understand that when someone withdraws, it's not always because you're too much. It's often because they haven't yet learned how to be enough for themselves. They may be afraid of intimacy, afraid of being truly seen, afraid that love will demand more than they know how to give. So they protect themselves with silence, with coldness, with emotional distance. But none of that defines you, and none of that should control you. You are not here to chase people who are still running from their own reflection. You are not here to earn the love you've already given so freely. You are not here to lose sleep trying to interpret silence that isn't yours to translate. You are here to become whole, to cultivate peace, to learn the quiet strength of not needing to be needed. And when you truly internalize that, everything changes. You stop fighting for half-hearted attention. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding. You stop bleeding for those who only know how to take. Instead, you begin a new kind of love, a wiser love, a grounded love, a love that begins with yourself and overflows gently, never urgently. You become the calm one in the storm. You let people come and go without losing yourself in the process. You let silence speak, and you stop panicking to fill it. And most of all, you remember that what you give to yourself sets the tone for every relationship around you. The love you give to others may not always return in the form you hoped. But the love you give to yourself, that's the one that holds you steady. That's the one that never leaves. So if you've ever felt ignored by the one you love, take heart. You are not forgotten. You are simply being asked to love deeper, starting from the inside out. Let the silence teach you, let the distance shape you, and let the Stoic in you rise with quiet dignity. Because in the end, it was never about how they loved you. It was always about how well you've learned to love without losing yourself. If this message spoke to you, if you've ever sat in silence, wondering why someone who once cared has grown distant, know this: you're not alone. We've all been there, questioning, doubting, hoping, trying to hold together a bond that seems to be slipping through our hands. But maybe, just maybe, this video gave you a new lens, a calmer voice inside, a way to hold your heart without holding on to someone else too tightly. So now I invite you to share. What part of this reflection resonated most with you? Have you ever experienced a moment where distance revealed more about love than words ever could? Drop your thoughts in the comments, not just for yourself, but for someone else reading who needs the courage to feel less alone. And if you'd like more content like this, grounded in Stoic wisdom, emotional clarity, and healing honesty, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video with someone who may need it. Your presence here makes this community real. Thank you for choosing reflection over reaction, dignity over desperation, and peace over panic. Until next time, choose yourself, quietly, confidently, completely.